Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 2016 horror thriller Hush, which is a film directed by Mike Flanagan, and Mike Flanagan also helped write the film along with Kate Siegel. Now, Mike Flanagan is a director who is fairly well known now in horror, but not really to me, because this is the first film I've seen of his. He directed a film called Absentia. One of his first horror films. His first directorial debut was Absentia, and then he did Oculus, which is based on a short film he did. I have Oculus, I just haven't gone around to seeing it yet. And then, this film Hush. He also directed the Ouija prequel, which is coming out this year, as well as Before I Wake. So he's pretty much a horror guy. And it features a score by the Newton Brothers. The score was one of the few things about this that I really liked. I gotta be honest, I thought this was a really good score. There were some particular pieces of music that I thought were memorable, and I thought really were kind of unique for a film like this. Cinematography by James Kinnest, or Kinnest, it was okay. It was pretty solid, I guess, for what he was asked to do. And editing by Mike Flanagan, it's pretty good. I mean, pretty much when it comes to there are things about this movie that work. I think the direction by Mike Flanagan is actually really good. So I can see why critics really latched on to his direction and really thought his direction was uh, really fine, and it was definitely something that was worth praising. Um, but the film as a whole, I honestly found pretty disappointing. Even though it had some good direction and the thriller elements, some of them worked. Not enough of them worked, and the story wasn't engaging enough, and the characters weren't engaging enough for me personally. And that's why I ultimately found the film to be pretty forgettable and pretty definitely lackluster. I wouldn't really call it uninspired because uninspired it does have it does try to do something unique. I mean, I was already curious about the film from the trailer because it was another. I'm not a big fan of your everyday average home invasion movie, but I like the concept of having a woman who is deaf and mute who was dealing with an intruder in her home in an isolated area. And I thought that could have been a nice film. I thought it had a lot of potential for suspense and thrills and some nice little old school Hitchcockian type suspense. Well, sadly, a lot of that really isn't there. There's potential here. It just doesn't really live up to it. In my opinion, it does not live up to its full potential. And for the most part, especially after the first 20 minutes, I honestly felt the film became very uninteresting, monotonous, repetitive, and it was pretty uneventful. And that was really too bad. But anyway, I'm going to kind of spoil some things here because I honestly have forgotten most of the movie already. And so I'm just going to go look at the plot here. It's this pretty simple plot. I mean, it deals with this writer named Maddie Madison Young, played by Kate Siegel, who also helped write the film. I thought her performance was meh. It was there, but I honestly thought the writing for her character could have been better because there really wasn't much to her character other than she is a woman who lost her hearing after a bout of bacterial meningitis. Oh, so I guess she isn't really mute. She can talk, but she doesn't really do it that much. I guess she is. I think she also is mute. I think she's mute and she's deaf because she can't really say words, I guess. You don't really hear her talk. She talks in sign language throughout the entire movie, pretty much. So she lives in a small cottage in the woods, surviving off the money from her book sales. And yeah, that's all. Honestly, that's what her character is. She's deaf, she's mute, or she's just deaf and can't speak, and she's a writer. That's it. And she doesn't have much of a personality, at least to me, and it's hard for a deaf woman to have that, but there's a prime example of a film that actually does do that and manages to give a personality to a deaf woman, and that is Hear No Evil with Marlee Matlin, which I honestly thought was pretty underrated. And I gotta be honest, I definitely would say that I like that a lot more than Hush. Because Marlee Matlin was just a much more charismatic, captivating character than Madison in this. She was also a lot more intelligent. This woman, she does some pretty stupid shit later on in the film, stretches out the running time, things that I understand she didn't do at this certain point in time because then the movie would be over. But that's a problem with the screenplay. And the movie's only 81 something minutes long, but it feels really long after a certain point. After the first 20 minutes or so, it drags. And it doesn't really, there's not much suspense because the lead is boring. So that's a big problem for me. The lead is very boring. She has a neighbor friend of hers named Sarah, played by Samantha Sloyan, who was honestly more likable she was the most likable character in the entire movie for me. She had spunk, she had personality, she had charisma. I would have been fine. I don't necessarily need tons of character development in these type of movies. I just need a character who's got charisma, who's charismatic, who isn't about it, who it's more interesting than a block of wood. Because it's pretty much what this woman is. She's about as interesting as a block of wood or a wooden door. Um, but anyway, her friend Sarah visits her and return a copy of one of her books. And that night she's chased back to Maddie's cottage by a masked man played by John Gallagher Jr. And the mask he was wearing was kind of creepy to me. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Michael Myers or something you might see in The Purge. And Sarah bangs on the door for help, but Maddie doesn't notice her, and the man stabs her to death on the doorstep. And it was a pretty brutal scene, practical blood. I'll give the film credit for that. It doesn't have CGI blood. There's practical blood here. There's actual, food coloring and corn syrup used here. But that's not saying much. I mean, I'm not impressed by that. You should have that in a horror film, as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, there's really not much in terms of gore. But then the film starts to fall apart because the man realizes that Maddie is deaf. He basically starts fucking with her. He sneaks into her house, takes her phone, begins taking photos of her without her knowing, sends it to her laptop to make her aware of his presence. She realizes she's being stalked, so she locks herself inside the house. The guy cuts the power, sabotages her car, cuts the tires. Maddie writes, won't tell, didn't see your face. Didn't see face, boyfriend coming home on the glass door in lipstick. And actually, I meant to say when this is when the film starts to fall apart. It's actually here at this very moment because he takes his mask off and he looks like the most unintimidating, just completely boring villain you will ever see. This guy, his performance is alright, but he looks like a poor man's Eminem. And he just looks like your average everyday thug. And that's your villain. That's your bad guy. So you not only have a boring lead, you have a boring protagonist, now you have a boring antagonist who's just trying to be this wannabe tough guy, white boy, hipster looking motherfucker with a tattoo on his neck. So, and I'm like, this guy isn't even that intimidating. And then the film just spends this whole time like, oh, she even has this whole scene where she literally speaks to herself. And she's saying things to herself like, well, you can't run because he's faster than you. You can't do anything because he's stronger than you. I'm like, this guy looks like what weighs a buck 120 or 140 soaking wet. I mean, what the fuck? Really? This guy? This guy is the guy who's gonna. I mean, this guy doesn't look like he'd do shit. He runs around with a crossbow, and that's his main choice of weapon. and he has like one little knife. So when he's not using the crossbow, he just has a knife. Just one knife. Not a machete, just a little knife. So then it becomes this boring game of cat and mouse that I don't give a shit about because I don't care about the lead and the killer isn't interesting and the killer isn't, one of those killers that you love to hate. So, and then the film just starts to frustrate the hell out of me with its characters just making stupid decisions. So Maddie, she goes in and she tries to distract the killer with a car alarm. But in this moment, I thought she spends all this time to go outside and press the button on the remote to set the car alarm off. And I don't know if it's the editing or if it's the writing. I think it's the writing. It doesn't make it clear that it's her car. I thought it was for a second the neighbor's car, and if it's the neighbor's car, then she could have just ran or ran to the neighbor's car and drove away. Or she could have just done this and just honestly just escaped. She could while she's doing the car alarm trick. Well, our villain over here, fucking Eminem, poor man's Eminem, the Eminem without the M. He's going around and looking for where the car alarm came from. She could have ran into the woods and could have been gone, but nope, nope. So she goes in but she tries to get Sarah's phone off from her dead body, but she doesn't get it. She fails to get it. So the killer gets it. She fights the killer off with a hammer by just stabbing the guy in the wrist with the back of the hammer, and then locks herself inside the house again. She makes several more failed attempts to escape, which each attempt is more infuriating than the last to witness. She eventually then decides to climb through the second story window onto the roof. She tries distracting the killer and trying to make a run for it, but he comes back before she can climb off the roof. He fires a crossbow bolt into her leg. She manages to knock him off the roof, but it's still his crossbow. She tries climbing up to finish her off. I don't know why she didn't she did actually hit him, but I mean, she didn't try to finish the job. He's there, he's out of breath, do something. No, no, no. I'm not really a fan of Your Next, but I'll give the film credit for one thing. At least its female character, its female lead, was a genuine badass. This woman is a wannabe. And she doesn't really she tries to be a badass and totally fails. It absolutely falls flat on her ass when it comes to being a badass, if you ask me. And she's got her trying to use a crossbow reminded me of Linda Blair in Savage Streets, which just made me like, well, I just want to watch Savage Streets. Whole thing with Linda Blair with the crossbow. He's like, "Are you flexible? Yeah, good. Now you can bend over and kiss your own ass goodbye." Oh man, the Savage Streets. I mean, that's a much better movie than Hush. So anyway, then it gets really stupid because she's fucked up. She basically fixes her leg up, and she's cannot seem to pull the crossbow back. She can't load the crossbow because women are weak. Women. I know women are weaker in some ways physically than men are, but this woman takes the cake here. She can't even pull a crossbow back. And while she's trying to pull this crossbolt back, Sarah's boyfriend, John, played by Michael Trucco, he shows up at the house looking for Sarah, and this guy is a fucking dumbass. So the stupidity continues. This guy goes in and looks around, tries to look for his missing girlfriend. Here comes the killer, who just shows up with the light from his fucking cell phone, acts like he's a cop, and this total moron, this thick-headed jock, is like, duh, yeah, I had a bite if this guy's a cop because he has a light. Well, at least at first he does, and then he eventually realizes because he's got, I don't know, his brain moves about as slow as molasses in terms of how quickly the nerves fire. He eventually is like, oh yeah, he's not a cop. This guy with the tattoo on his neck, who doesn't even have a gun, who is standing here at somebody's house without a police car out front. Why would anyone assume that this guy was a cop? And it's in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods somewhere, in some isolated location. Bullshit! There's no way anyone should believe that this guy's a cop from the moment they see this motherfucker with his giant tattoo on his neck, looking like a poor man's Eminem, going around trying to. It's just unbelievable. And so eventually the guy decides, oh, he's not a cop. So he decides, instead of attacking the guy, like tackling him, like off the balcony or fucking sucker punching his ass, he decides, I'm gonna take a rock, try to trick the guy into looking into some plants for a spare key, and I guess he moves about as slow as his brain takes to process things, because he can't hit him with the rock because he gets stabbed in the neck. So he gets stabbed in the neck, bleeding everywhere. And then he falls on the ground. The killer tries to go after him. He gets up and is trying to choke the guy out while he's bleeding to death. And this woman, Maddie, is just there banging on the window, just crying. Ah, ah, ah. I'm like, you could get out and help him. He's choking him out. The killer can't do shit at this moment. He's being choked out with every last bit of energy and strength that this dumbass jock has, and you're sitting there smacking on a window going, ah, ah, go out there and do something. Grab the crossbow. You could just use the crossbow as a weapon itself. You don't have to use the arrows. Or just take the arrows by themselves. Take some arrows, go out there, fucking stab the motherfucker. Nope. 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 No way. So the guy ends up killing him. Killer kills the dumbass jock, but she can't run on her injured leg, so that's why she didn't go out. And I'm like, you can limp fast enough to go after this guy. He's completely incapacitated right now. He's getting choked out. He can't fucking move. He doesn't have his knife on him. You have the crossbow. But no, I can't run. You don't have to run. It's not even that far away. It's literally a few feet from your front door. I'm sorry, it's just so frustrating. This stupidity just pissed me off. So, she doesn't do anything. So then she begins thinking about all her options, and I admittedly kind of an interesting way to show the scene where she basically hallucinates all these different versions of herself speaking to her, saying that if you do this, you're gonna die. If you try to do that, you're gonna die. So you only have one option: fight back. So finally, she realizes, okay, I gotta fight back now. Now she realizes she's gotta fight back because the movie is getting close to being over, and there wasn't enough here for a feature-length film. So we gotta get this over with pretty quick. We gotta get this over with soon. So she loads the crossbow before and shoots the guy in the shoulder, the killer in the shoulder, before he kills her cat, whom she calls bitch for some reason. And she shoots him in the shoulder. Shoot him in the head. Shoot him in the eyes. Shoot him in the chest. Shoot him in the heart. Kill the motherfucker. In the shoulder? Either you're a shitty, you have no aim, you have shitty aim, or you just suck. Because she's literally a few feet away from him. It's not like he's like 10, 50 feet away from the target's right in front of her, and she hits him in the shoulder. Pisses him off. So he runs back inside. Her hand gets caught in the front door because she's a dumbass, and she gets her hand fucked up because she goes in and tries to go grab one of the arrows that's outside. This guy's standing there right next to the door. It's like, what do you think's gonna happen? Duh! If I grab the arrow, my hand is gonna get fucking broken. Exactly. He's gonna slam the sliding door in her hand. That's what happens. Her hand gets broken, and he says he's gonna enter the house. She taunts him back by writing "Do it, coward" on door with her blood. She types her last words in a description in her book that she's writing, and then climbs in hides in her bathroom. The killer climbs into the bathroom from behind her from a skylight. Prepares to stab her with his little pig sticker knife, but he feels, she feels his breath on her, and then she stabs him in the knee. And he then stumbles to the kitchen where she sprays insecticide and then uses her specialized smoke alarm, which has all these flashing lights on it to blind and deafen him, and it's really loud. But apparently, okay, all right. She just thought of this now. She could have done that earlier, but now she's like, oh, no, I should fight back. After I got shot in the leg and I'm bleeding out. Of course, he manages to regain the upper hand and starts to strangle her. She's about to pass out, but she takes a nearby corkscrew and stabs him in the throat. A very lame, just unimpressive death for the bad guy. It fit the guy. The guy was boring, so it made sense that he would die a boring death. He dies. She calls 911. She sits outside on the porch. The police come, and she closes her eyes and she smiles. End credits. That's Hush. And you're not going to hear a peep from me in regards to this movie after this review, because there's not much to say about Hush. It's 81 minutes of 20 minutes of some decent sort of stuff. It's all goes all downhill with a character doing stupid shit, a villain who is completely just uninteresting. There's nothing imaginative about this guy. He's just a totally lifeless, insipid, just completely unstimulating villain. And it kind of fits the film. The film is kind of it's featureless, just like the guy's mask that he wears. The only kind of things that stand out with this is admittedly some good direction, some decent cinematography. The editing at times could be a little bit better. And the concept of a deaf and mute woman having to deal with a killer who's in her house. But the film does not do that concept justice. It's like the writers just had a cool concept and did not have enough time to write an actual film around it. And it felt like something that would have been, if they didn't have the time to write an actual film about this concept, then they should have just, I don't know, saved it for some anthology or something, because then maybe it would have worked better. But as a feature film, there's not enough here because the characters suck. And in a film where you're trying to build suspense, it does not work. It does not help things at all if you have characters that are not interesting and you don't give a shit about it. And I did not give a shit about the lead. I did not give a shit about her. I could care less. She was about as bland as tap water. So, I don't know what else to say about the film except it was rated out of 5 stars. I give it 2 out of 5. This is definitely a below average film for me, a below average thriller. It wasn't very thrilling. And that's too bad. I had high hopes for this. I wanted it to be really good. The reviews were good, and I don't know. I don't think it's that great of a film. I don't think it's that suspenseful. I don't think it's that thrilling. And even though I wasn't really the biggest fan of Mute Witness, I'd probably rather watch that than this. It had some suspenseful moments that were definitely more suspenseful than anything in this. But Mute Witness I didn't really care for because it was like a disjointed movie. Didn't know what it wanted to be. This, it knows what it wants to be, but what it is just, it's just really forgettable and really, it's not necessarily unwatchable, but flat. Just really forgettable, flat uh, stuff. It's the cinematic equivalent of a flat soda. It's not the worst thing ever, but trust me, no one wants to be drinking a warm flat soda. They'd rather be drinking a nice, ice cold, soda or something than a flat one. So cheers. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.